Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast episode. On today's show, we have John Mitton. He is a sales director at Car Wars, and my good friend, Dan Moore, the president of Visitas. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure, Brian. You know that.
All right. Well, let's jump in. We have a lot to cover because obviously we're moving very close to DMSC, our annual conference in the Napa Valley, and we have some groundbreaking data that Car Wars has produced as part of a bigger study on the effectiveness of Google SEM. We're going to get to that. But John, let me start off with you. For dealers who are not sure on the value proposition, the product solutions that Car Wars offers to help dealers, how would you describe the value proposition today? Because the company has evolved, enhanced products and solutions. So if you're riding an elevator with a dealer and they say, hey, John, tell me a little bit about Car Wars, what would you say?
Well, I would tell them that here at Car Wars, we're obsessed with one thing, and that is helping the dealerships basically own the phone. We know the phones can be complicated. We know they can be frustrating. And we know that sometimes dealers don't always know how to tackle it. So what Car Wars does is we're not just a call tracking provider. We really picture ourselves as a total phone solution. We're not just going to record every single inbound, outbound call, but we're going to leverage our human reviewers, our artificial intelligence to ensure no phone up ever slips through the crack. We want to make sure that those CRMs have all the phone ups that are coming to the dealership in the bucket in there, ready for follow-up, giving the managers the insight they need.
Well, John, I'm going to jump in on one thing because I think that is an important distinction that Car Wars is a complete telephony platform. One of the things that the research that I'll be sharing at DMSC exposed that dealers are paying for pay-per-click advertising, the phone's ringing, and the phone's not getting connected. Like we are having disconnected phone calls. Now that could be because people are waiting too long and they give up, or the phone routing is going to voicemail. What is Car Wars doing today to help make sure that calls that are coming in from a paid advertising campaign are getting to the right person and not creating a disappointing first experience?
Man, that's a great question. I think that's one of the things that is often overlooked when we're talking about the phones and we're talking about phone skills. So what we found, and probably what you found in that data study, is only about 2/3 of all inbound phone calls are actually getting connected. And I liked what you said there with connected, because we don't like to track answer rate. We don't care how often you're picking up the phone. We care if that customer is actually getting to someone on the other end, someone that can actually help them out. So what we can do on the telephony side is ensure some of the stuff you're talking about, the dead extensions, the getting transferred to voicemails, the voicemails that never get answered, that doesn't happen. We'll help you with the technology piece of that with things like auto attendance with bridges. So when you press 2 for sales, you can be darn sure someone on the other end is going to pick up. And then we'll help you with the phone skills portion of that as well. So rather than cold transfers from receptionist to that voicemail, we're going to train the team up and make sure that every time that a customer goes on hold, that they're not there that long and they're actually going to be getting helped with a very short time. Nothing drives us more crazy than seeing those numbers of those not connected calls. The really scary thing about that is only about 15% of customers that don't get connected actually pick up the phone at a later date and call the dealership back.
Wow. And so we're talking about a huge missed opportunity. I mean, I'll just share my personal experience, and I'm sure our listeners can, relate. If it's something that is commoditized, if I can get it somewhere else, I'm calling one place. It could be a restaurant for reservations. It could be, something that I'm just looking for, that I'm looking for the confirmation that I can be serviced properly. If someone doesn't pick up the phone, or I get thrown to voicemail, very likely I'm not calling back. I'm going to another place. So John, we're going to be talking a lot more about the phone routing and phone outcomes on today's podcast. Dan, same question to you. VistaDash has evolved from a consolidated reporting tool into something much more in line with a business intelligence platform, helping dealers really understand where the blind spots or inefficiencies in their marketing. How would you describe it to dealers?
Yeah, I mean, simply put, for Vistas, we're a marketing intelligence platform that basically standardizes all of your marketing data so that you can truly compare apple to apple. And to your point, there's a lot of blind spots in marketing. So, to compare Auto Trader against your Google used car campaigns, it's kind of hard to do today. But again, using Vista, because we standardize the events and the goals and the data that comes through and present it in a way it's easy to digest, easy to compare. So again, dealers can make much more intelligent decisions around where they're moving their marketing dollars.
Dan, obviously being involved with VistaDash from the beginning, and then a few years ago, Car Wars purchasing VistaDash and enhancing the platform. One thing is still confusing to me. Every month, I review dozens of Google Analytics accounts from dealers who are just asking a basic question: Brian, is my marketing effective? And I would say 99% of the time, their Google Analytics account isn't set up properly so that they could even inspect. Dan, I'm not pointing fingers. I could point the fingers at the website companies, but they don't necessarily control the chat that's installed or the digital retailing that's installed or the pop-up coupons that are installed. I mean, how come more dealers are not concerned about having all the data they need to make a business decision?
Because I think part of the assumption is they think they do have it.
That's a good point.
Because again, everybody has Google Analytics and they think, listen, I put some events and goals in there maybe, or my provider says they fire them, but it's hard. They don't know what to inspect. Again, their goal is to, sell cars, right?
Right.
Let's make things happen. There are some groups that, you and I both work with that do have a data scientist or do have someone that's really entrenched in analytics. But for the majority, that's not the case. So they just, a lot of the challenge becomes just don't know what to inspect. And that's kind of where we've made a good footing too, is just that organization that helps not only set up and standardize the goals of it, but continue to monitor to ensure, to your point, the chat's being tracked, right? The digital retailing tools firing when it's supposed to. Things are happening. But as an industry, that I think that's a challenge to the whole industry, is that we've got to do a better job at standardizing our metrics and making sure that we're putting it in the most valuable place, which is in the dealer's hands. Whether that's, firing events into Google Analytics, whether that's providing them, reporting, whatever that might be. We just continue to do a disservice to the dealer who's thinking they're getting all the data to make a decision, but we're not exposing those blind spots.
Well, one of the things that is consistent as I work with dealers is they're very appreciative that someone took the time to share with them that they had these blind spots or holes. But sometimes, Dan, and you've been this, it puts their marketing manager in a little bit of a hot spot, meaning the dealer group has their marketing manager, and I'm saying, okay, there's just no way you can be inspecting your marketing. And like I said, I think each vendor should be responsible to making sure that their product is properly giving the dealer the data, but that's not what's happening. How do we explain to dealers that are listening that it's kind of a difficult skill to have I guess the viewpoint that you and I have by looking at 100+ different products that dealers use, understand how they work, know how to configure them. It's really not so much a skill that most marketing managers should be expected to have. Am I correct, or am I making it too easy on the marketing managers?
I mean, I think you're making it correct. I mean, I remember my time in the dealership as a marketing manager for Multi Rooftop Group. I mean, I was running everything from, what are the leads doing to, hey, can you fix Viato, right? So I think in some cases there's a false expectation that a marketing manager should just know everything. But it's kind of one of those points where it gets into a trick bag of, well, you're you're kind of a jack of all, master of none.
Right.
So, it's a little challenging because I know speak with 20 groups. I've had some conversations in the same scenarios, and it's like you get into some situations where a dealer doesn't even own their Google Analytics.
Come on, that just happened. That just happened this week.
Yeah, no, I'm working with one right now, and it could be possibly the same one. But we're working to build a new one because again, they can't get ownership of it, so we can build a new one, set everything correctly, and get that going. But again, our whole point is, even what makes us unique is we fire everything into the dealer's analytics.
That's right.
And I think there's something to be said, a little bit of what we call vendor integrity, in the sense of we're putting our stuff inside and it's running through the dealer's Google Analytics account and then comes into Vista. So then that way, if in fact we part ways or whatever, they still own their data. And I think that's critical to the scenario for all dealers listening is, do you own your data? Meaning, are you in charge of your Facebook account? Are you in charge of your Google Analytics account? Do you own it to that point so that you're ensuring you never have a data loss just because you part ways with a certain provider? It's your data at the end of the day, and you've got to be able to make some comparisons.
So such good advice, such wisdom there, that dealers really need to think about their tendency, which is very true, to change their marketing partners, even website partners, every year or two. It's very common, and not having the ability to compare apples to apples. Was this website platform better? For most
Right.
dealers, they never even check, or same thing with their agency. John, one of the revelations that I think I'd like to challenge the auto industry at the upcoming DMSE conference is this concept of, do you understand the outcomes of the phone outcomes of your marketing dollars? And what was very clear from the data that we collected from the 4 largest call tracking companies in automotive and some of the largest ad agencies. Let me put it in context for our listeners. About 97% of all dealers spend on Google goes to variable ops, or out of the variable ops budget. And yet the majority of conversions that take place from that spend are the phone. And then when you break out the phone, less than 15% of the calls are actually sales opportunities, meaning there's a tremendous amount of marketing dollars taking out of variable ops with the hope that they're going to get someone to call or fill out a lead form or chat about a new or used car. But actually, the advertising is really more of a transport device to get people to call the dealership about service, about parts, about warranties, about rebates, recalls, about delivering packages. So John, when dealers understand that they can listen to phone outcomes, they actually can then change the campaign structures to generate more sales opportunities. But this is the rare case. I bet over 95% of all of the reports that dealers get from their Google spend just show the number of phone calls as a number, how many leads they got as a number, how many chats they got as a number. But I have not seen, maybe except for once, if a dealer's campaign generated 100 phone calls this month, that have broke them out: sales, service, parts, admin, other. Why is this the case, John? Why are we so behind? Is it because Google doesn't want dealers to really know? Is it the agencies that don't want dealers to really know how ineffective Google is to generate a measured sales outcome? What's your read on that?
Well, I think it's a little bit of all the above, right? And I think that dealers are so tied to that Google My Business. I mean, you have to have it up there. You have to track the amount of calls that are coming in. But you're right, unless a dealer sits down and has time to listen to every single one of those, and I haven't met a GM that has time for that yet, then they're not going to know what the actual outcomes are. So where Car Wars kind of comes into it is I talked about those human reviewers we have. So we mix those with some artificial intelligence. And because we know on the back end where the calls are coming from, because we put our tracking line on every single ad source, and because we're listening to all the calls, I can package that up pretty easily and tell you, Brian, that, hey, Auto Trader gave you 12 calls last month and 8 of them were sales opportunities. And not only were 8 of them sales opportunities, you did a good job and you were able to set the appointment on 6 of them. But then I bring up cars.com and say, hey, they gave you 20 calls, but only 6 of them were sales opportunities. So what we're allowing dealers to do, just like Dan, is hold their marketing truly accountable when it comes to the phone. We don't care how many dials are coming to the dealership. We care about 2 things. How many of those are sales opportunities, and how can we help the dealers capture as many of those as possible and get the customer into the dealership?
Well, that's really what I want to challenge dealers this year at DMSC is that call tracking oftentimes is associated with call coaching. And, dealers go hot and cold. And this, John, as a sales director at Car Wars, you have dealers who are all in on improving phone quality and they invest in call recording and the coaching and the scoring and they see improvement. And then a new manager comes in, it's not so important. And they're like, yeah, I'm not wasting time on that. I want to make the case that dealers who are spending 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 bucks a month on pay-per-click advertising that's driving measurable traffic to their websites, they can't afford not to inspect the call outcomes. Otherwise, they will continue to, I'm just going to say, misdirect advertising dollars and get stuck with asking questions, why isn't my advertising more effective? And, sometimes, John, maybe you can answer this. When I ask dealers why they're not using tracking numbers more consistently, one of the answers is, well, we did at one time, but then, tracking numbers fell off our website, or the website company dropped our tracking numbers and it was too much of a pain. Has any of that gotten better, that your relationships or integration points with the website companies are more stable so dealers don't have to worry about tracking numbers dropping?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, a part of my role as sales director over here, I also head up our implementation team. So when a dealer onboards with Car Wars, one of the things that my team does is liaise really closely with not just the website providers, not just the dealers to help them place their own tracking lines, but also a lot of the third-party vendors to include Auto Trader cars, things like that. And I'll tell you, we have that process down to the point where if I throw a tracking line on a source, I am 100% confident it's going to stay there until someone takes it down. That's going to give them the insight of where the calls are coming from with the outcomes that we talked about before. One of the reasons that I found that dealers may be hesitant to use tracking lines is because they have that main line number that they've used for years, that they think that they have a really strong hold in the market, that the customers know that number. What we found talking to these dealers, talking to potential customers for the dealers, that's not often the case. Although it's been around for years and years and it's been on your marketing, we don't find that a lot of potential customers actually know the number to the dealership, right? So I would say the tracking lines, the benefits of them to track your spend, to track where the calls are coming from, far outweigh not just the risk, but what you think the reward is for keeping that mainline number around.
Well, John, that is so true. I don't remember phone numbers. I mean, every time, I don't even save business phone numbers in my phone. It's just taking up space, unless I'm calling somebody every day or 2 or 3 times a week. I just Google it. I don't keep my barber, I get my hair cut, 5 times a year. I just Google it, So I think dealers need to understand that they can't afford not to have these insights. Dan, let's piggyback off this conversations I bring up on today's podcast, that dealers are really not using phone outcomes to improve their marketing strategies, and they need to, and it's not optional anymore. It's not a luxury. It's absolutely core to marketing return on ad spend. What are other areas or blind spots that you see that dealers should know about, or misconceptions of how their marketing is working?
Yeah, I think a couple blind spots. Obviously, you and I love this one: assisted conversions. We spent a lot of time on last click, which is, I mean, still valid, and obviously we can see that through VistaDash. But the assisted conversion piece, which, I mean, again, you can set up multi-channel funnel in GA. You don't have to have a tool necessarily like Vista or some of the other ones out there. So it can be done in Google Analytics, but it definitely lends itself, because I think one of the common themes I see when it comes to blind spots, if we're kind of using just an example, is, at a dealer spending, about $5,000 on a used car campaign in Google, and, had 3 third-party providers, wanted to cut one. And I said, well, let's do a true apples to apples comparison. We looked at the used car campaign, spending about $5,000, generated, 15 direct conversions, a couple assisted conversions. And then, funny enough, we look at, and this is the blind spot, we look at a particular third party, for example, and they match the same performance, right? Just from a traffic referral standpoint. So that website's getting that credit and saying, hey, look, me, the website, I did this. When in reality, it was that third party. And then now they're spending $5,000. So right now we're almost equal to equal, but then we go and look at the CRM information, right? And then boom, here's another 75 leads. So again, I think, some misconceptions about paid search versus third party is this whole thing of, oh yeah, just drive everybody to your website. Well, some of it is being driven to your website, but the shopper wants to start and look at a bigger, mass inventory, if you will, consume and narrow down. So you want to be there in that moment, but again, you want to validate it by where you should be. And it also helps, not cannibalizing yourself, because all the paid search, that you're doing, the third parties are doing the same paid search to get that used car buyer as well. So are you cannibalizing yourself all the same?
So Dan, you spend a lot of time talking with dealers, and your great support teams like Kat and Micah, are just leaning in, helping dealers understand their marketing spend. So VistaDash is not a one-time investment. It's really a coaching guidance tool. Are you seeing more effective, and this is high level now, effective return on ad spend on Facebook versus Google? Are they about the same? I know that you just mentioned third-party classifieds. We'll get to that in a minute, but what about Google spend versus Facebook spend? What do you think is helping dealers more efficiently?
That one's still hard to tell, because again, it's not an even spread. People are still, as I say, kind of putting their toe in the water with Facebook. We're seeing what's really interesting to see is if we're looking at shopper engagement, right? I would tell you that Facebook is generating a higher level engaged shopper, from the sense of, taking more, if you will, virtual test drives, coming in, highly interactive with the photos and the vehicle itself, than some of the Facebook or some of the paid search campaigns that I've seen. So there does seem to be some trade-off in shopper engagement more than anything.
Yeah, and that supports the data, because remember, if the majority of the phone calls that are coming in from people who clicked on an ad or clicked on the mobile extension of an ad is not for sales, that means that there could very well just be going to the dealer's website to go to the service page, get the service number, or just go to the dealer's homepage to verify an address. So the engagement would be lower. And I think dealers still don't really understand that differential quality and traffic, because Facebook isn't a navigational tool, it's an experiential environment. So if they see a dealer ad in their feed, it's not because they Googled, or searched the dealer's name, Let's talk about a little bit more political conversation. Dealers typically are spending on Auto Trader, Cars, and Car Gurus. And what dealers spend on these sites varies greatly. A lot of it has to do with the sales deal that they worked out, or the volume of cars. But dealers now have the lowest inventory of all time, and they're asking themselves, well, the cars are kind of selling themselves. I'm selling every new car I possibly could have. They're having record profits. So looking at, say, the last quarter or the last 6 months of the major listing sites, so Cars, Auto Trader, Gurus, Edmunds, KBB, is there anyone that has that sweet spot of quantity and, kind of engaged shopper at an affordable price?
Yeah, so of course you want to go down this slippery slope. Thank you. So here's what's interesting in this statement. We as an industry like to make kind of line in the sand statements. It's all or nothing. And what I would tell you is, the more and more I look at the data in Vista, and again, I got to use that as my comparison tool, is there are stores that operate better on each of the one platforms based on how they merchandise, how they price vehicles, so on. During this current moment, it's interesting to see some of the things that go on, because there's one other element that we're starting to tap into, which is gross profit. Because I can take a budget, right? And again, this is even kind of an interesting statement. So if you tell me I'm spending, let's just say, 10 grand with Auto Trader. Well, what is in that 10 grand? Is that alpha spotlights, premium listing, non-premium listing? Like, what's the full package? And let me understand the breadth of that. At the same point in time, I want to look at the effectiveness. How many leads do I get? How many sales do I get? But it's funny, with one of our CRM partnerships, we started getting gross profit, and it really kind of, just on this one provider, was looking at that same thing. And it was interesting to see that, like, Auto Trader had a really high gross profit versus others. Now, the others were doing really good in the sense of, cost per lead was really low. They sent a lot, the lead volume was there. But it was just interesting to see those mechanics. So this is where I tell dealers, you need to slow down, take a breath, and really look at this, because you're making a cut that potentially has an impact you're not paying attention to. And you'll say, hey, how many times have you heard this one? I cut Auto Trader and never missed a thing. Well, of course not. You were never tracking anything. So how do you know whether you missed or not?
Right.
Like you don't know. And the other piece that we've got to figure out too, that I think all of this uncovers, from the phone to the data, more importantly, where I think focus needs to, and this is that point where every dealer has to look in the mirror, is, am I going to finally get honest with my people and process problem? Because I'm buying my way out of fixing it by just flooding leads in.
Ooh, man, Dan, we're doing a little heart surgery today here. Like, we're getting to the crux of the matter. And, John mentioned it. I'm going to mention it in Napa, that, when you see 25% of paid search phone calls not connect, that's a structural problem. When you find that the people who do connect, that so few have appointments, then you start to say, you're right. Am I spending 20 grand a month when I really should be sending 10 grand? Because if I handled the problems properly, I could get the same output. Yeah. And then you do that over 12 months and you say, hey, I'm overspending. I'm just using as an example, $120,000 a year. And Car Wars costs, I'm just going to say a couple grand a month. And you say to yourself, hold on, if I just fix my problem, net, I'm going to save 100,000. I don't know if we get down into the weeds with that, but surely this is what Vistadash can do, is help identify these opportunities for improvement. So, John, let's talk about the one core area that I think most people know is this call coaching. So let's just say that Car Wars, because you track, you can know outcomes, and you can know when calls get connected and disconnected, and you know when calls get sent to voicemail, and you have all this data. And you're providing this feedback. And we understand it's a leadership issue. So the general manager or sales manager have to really want to fix the problem. But how long in general do you feel, using your tools and platform, would it take for a dealership to see a significant improvement in appointments, a significant improvement in call outcomes by using the platform? I know it varies, but if there's a dealer principal, general manager saying, I am absolutely making a commitment to get back into owning the phones, I'm going to call Car Wars up. What are you going to tell them is a reasonable window to see exciting change?
Well, we're going to tell them we're going to work as fast as they want. So what we believe over here at Car Wars is making that challenge and tackling that challenge as absolutely as simple as possible. We know that the phone could be complex. We know some of the stuff you're talking about could be frustrating. So we kind of boil everything that happens on a call down to 4 very simple metrics. First one is, we've been talking about this kind of for the past 20 minutes, is that connection. Is this customer actually getting the someone to help them out? Are they selling the appointment over the phone? Are they setting the appointment? And is that customer getting followed up with? And I think that last piece is the one that you can really make immediate improvements on. So one of the things that we kind of tend to gloss over a little bit is our outbound click-to-call program within the CRM. So immediately when you come onto Car Wars, you're going to see more leads into CRM because of our integrations. That's going to give the team the ability to follow up with those, to recapture them, to make sure those customers got helped. So I'll tell a dealer principal, signing on with Car Wars, put those tracking lines in place, you're going to get an immediate lift in phone ups in your CRM. You're going to get an immediate lift in the outbound click to call. And I'll tell them, yes, it is a leadership issue, like you alluded to, but we're kind of alongside them, helping with the consulting piece, helping with that coaching piece. And what I want to do is give them the tools to train, coach, mentor their own staff over the phone. So I would say, man, as quick as they want, 30 days, 60 days, we're really going to instill a culture of a phone accountability at the dealership. I really believe if you walk into the showroom floor, you walk through the sales tower, everyone there should know exactly what they're being measured against. And it should be really evident that the phones are the thing that's driving the improvement in the bottom line. So the dealers that really take that seriously, they're prepared to make the most of the market in any condition.
Well, that is exactly the, encouragement that I was hoping to hear, because if you told the dealer 6 months, 9 months, they don't have that much patience. And I think that for the dealers who are listening, who may have had a call recording, call tracking, telephony platform in place and removed it, just want you to understand what a 20% lift in marketing conversions, meaning eliminating these lost calls, what it would mean to have another 20% of connected calls per month. I mean, it's mind-blowing for high volume dealers, and very, very enticing even for smaller dealers, because now more than ever, dealers are trying to do more with less. And so if I can spend less because I'm handling the phones properly, I'm not needing to overspend to compensate for slippage in process, slippage in technology, slippage in staff focus. I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds like a sales pitch, but it really pays for itself multiple times over, because here's what we're finding. It's not that dealers aren't spending money on marketing. They're spending money on marketing every single month. And it's now very, very evident without knowing the outcomes of those calls. I mean, for the dealers who are listening, I want you to just ask for your Google paid search report for last month. And please take a look at how much you spent, and then look at the report and what were the conversion outcomes. And here's what you're going to find out. You're just going to find out on how many lead forms you got, how many phone calls you got, maybe if they were a really well integrated pay-per-click provider, it would show how many chats or texts. That's all you're going to get. And I want you to see which column has the most conversions. It's going to be the phone calls. And what if I told you that only 15% of those phone calls were aligned with the goal to get consumers to call about a new or used car? When you see the report, then, man, the ROI for your Google spend for new and used car sales is, well, unsustainable. And so that's why we need these outcomes, not just the conversion counts, to get better. Dan, when you work with a dealer, install Vista Dash, you're going to do a cleanup. You're going to make sure all their conversion goals are set up hard and soft. You're going to make sure the events are firing so they can see the usability of their websites and which buttons consumers are clicking on. How long does it take for your team to have enough data to give them some actionable insights on what to change, where to move funds to make sure it's more aligned with sales objectives?
Yeah, so generally speaking, about I mean, we can get into it because we've been doing it so long. We can see some of the trends and stuff just based on, the law of averages as we've seen over the years. But for the most part, we get some really good collective views in 30 days. And we kind of start, slowly identifying some opportunities, things like, hey, too many call to action buttons. These aren't getting any action. When we look at, how many events are happening based on all of these CTAs, we look at things of, where spends are, looking at some campaigns, trying to find some, campaigns that just aren't generating good shopping behavior or conversion behavior, and making small little tweaks. And I think that's kind of the biggest approach we take is, hey, we're not going to do anything radical. We're just going to slowly tweak the dial. And as we continue to make small adjustments, performance continues to enhance. I mean, there's obviously the right in your face, hey, that's a big problem. But for the most part, it just consistent little tweaks to kind of get them into that perfect marketing mix. What's getting the best, quality shopping traffic, and then work off of that. And then again, try to identify, is it a marketing problem? Is it an inventory problem? Or is it people and process? And that starts to move some of those behaviors around.
The other day I posted a little graphic. It reminded me of my angry young man days, which I've kind of controlled those wild outbursts, but some people still want me to always stir the pot. But I saw an odd campaign performance. It was a conquest email campaign. Some people who saw that post also chimed in and say, hey, I'm also using this company, and sent me some reports. Is these highly odd traffic patterns associated with conquest email, are we finding dealers going back to that? I mean, I thought that my expose on conquest email marketing stopped a lot of that waste. Are you seeing it come back? Because it seems to be very concerning to me.
Yeah, we do see that from time to time pop in there. So we keep an eye on it. Again, as you've pointed out, and we've been able to highlight, is a lot of bot traffic, right? So they're spending a lot of money getting bot traffic. Generally speaking, done right, some of their, again, they pay a lot of money for these CRMs, and they use about 10% of them. They do have email capabilities. So doing some of that in the email and actually targeting, current clients, things of that nature, pays out. But obviously, anytime they do these mailers where, hey, we're going to go conquest to get a bunch of new business for you, we generally know what's going to happen in that equation. And to your point, they become very suspect.
Yeah. And so I just want to encourage dealers that if you're running conquest email campaigns, and they may not be in your mind that expensive, 3,000 a month or 5,000 a month, I want to encourage you to reach out to Dan. And it's absolutely critical you understand. The recent post that I did was saying that this traffic had a unrealistic click to call rate. And the traffic, not a single lead was submitted, but a very high percentage of the people on mobile devices click the phone, like some crazy, like 20 something percent of all the mobile traffic click the call. Now this, John, is where I would have loved for this dealer to have had Car Wars, because you would have been able to see the incoming UTM tag. You would have been able to record all the calls. And here's what I think. To Dan's thought, it could have been bot traffic that clicked on the mobile click to call, which triggered the goal, which made the traffic look exciting. But I don't think those calls were connected. John, have you done any studies looking at mobile click to call and what percentage of mobile click to call from a dealer website actually connect?
I couldn't tell you from the actual mobile click to call, but I'll tell you that those are the most important ones, because when you're doing your research, you're doing it on your phone, you make that click to call through Google, you're probably ready to make some sort of buying decision, or you want to be talking about a car. So if you are not connecting those, there's a huge missed opportunity there that you really need to dig in and try to solve.
Yeah, and that's just a great reminder in today's I want it now economy. I think Amazon has done a great job of creating a retail experience that very few can match, meaning when you find something, it's easy to put in your shopping cart and they're going to tell you exactly when it gets delivered. The mobile shopper, when they've found something that they want, is going to expect some immediate response. And so, John, that is absolutely a great reminder that dealers should be looking at their mobile click to call connection and communication rates. And that's something that Car Wars can do, because it's pretty scary. And in the case of this Conquest email campaign, here's what I believe would happen. I would bet that almost 100% of those calls never connected, because they weren't real people. They were just either a browser plugin or some other technology that was clicking on the mobile click to call links. Gentlemen, as we wrap up today's podcast, I'm going to ask each of you to answer this question. Dealers who are listening to this podcast have many choices where they can partner with technology, and both of you are technology companies, one on the telephony side of the business and the other in really the data management, marketing, insight, business intelligence. So John, let me start with you. Dealers have choice. Why do you believe that they should be calling you as a follow-up to this podcast to get a demo of the latest Car Wars platform?
Well, I really think it's something that we mentioned earlier. One is, well, we're obsessed with this stuff, but two is how simple we make it. The last thing I want is to put more on a dealer's plate, to steal more of their time, to give something else that they need to manage. Here at Car Wars, we're going to make things as simple as possible, not just through the 4 very easy metrics that they can track to strive for more conversions on those inbound calls, but also just the ease of seeing those phone ups in CRM, the ease of click to call, and the ease of the reports that we can send you if you missed opportunities every day. The last thing I want is for a dealer to look at Car Wars as a nuisance, as something else on their plate. I'd rather just partner with them and give them the easiest solution possible to a very complex problem.
Well, that is music to the ears of store managers for sure, because their time is limited. Dan, same question. Dealers are spending money on marketing. They have many touch points that they're investing in to create awareness for their dealership, to drive more traffic to their website. And for the most part, their marketing dollars are directed to generate new and used car sales opportunities. Why is Vista Dash the right tool for them now?
It's the right tool because at the end of the day, there's so many different logins, and to the point, time is the piece that you just can't get back. So being able to aggregate all of their marketing data into a single dashboard to create operational efficiency, and at the same point be 100% agnostic, no skin in the game, not going to upsell you some marketing hoopla or anything. We're going to look at it from an agnostic standpoint, compare apples to apples, and help you make sense of what is going on with your marketing and how to better optimize. So again, you get quality opportunities versus just paying for a bunch of quantity that's not converting.
Well, gentlemen, I love both of these products, and I have so many dealer friends that are using these tools. And so I know what you're saying is true. And more importantly, the dealers who are attending NAPA will have a chance to hear from both the Car Wars and Vista Dash team and get some first market research on the effectiveness of their marketing spend and extra attention on Google SEM, since it's the largest portion of dealers' pay-per-click or online digital spend. Also want to remind our listeners that if you can't make it out to the Napa Valley, July 11th, 12th, 13th, the conference can also be experienced virtually. So we're selling both live tickets and virtual tickets. And all of the keynotes, workshops, and panels will be recorded and online for 30 days after the show. So don't miss the opportunity to get the best-in-class insights on digital retailing, marketing optimization, website merchandising, sales process, customer communication and follow-up, video, OTT. There's a lot of key topics that we will be discussing at DMSC, and you can get all that information by going to digitalmarketingstrategies.org, and the whole conference agenda is there, and get your tickets for sure. Well, Dan, John, thanks so much for your time. For the people listening today, you should know that this podcast channel interviews thought leaders, disruptors, innovators in the automotive retail space. So make sure you check out all of the podcast sessions that have been recorded. And not only do we have our DMSC conference coming up in July, but we also have the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit coming up in November in Palm Beach, Florida. It's another time where the folks at Car Wars and Vista Dash bring outstanding data to the table to help dealers make smarter marketing and operational decisions. I want to thank everyone for listening, and don't forget to come back next time for another exciting podcast on the Passion Podcast channel.